Trump has the US have these two countries literally fallen into a trap out of which there seems to be no way for them but to exit.
A group of Marines who were in and around Japan
Yeah.
are supposed to enter the US CENTCOM area. CENTCOM is the central command of the US military that's handling all the operations in Iran.
And this is something that we have not seen with the United States and a smaller power in the 21st century, that the US has bombed a country for almost a month, like literally round the clock. The US and Israel, two of the most powerful air forces, and I'm not even counting the US Navy, which is an equally powerful air force. Just US and Israel have been bombing Iran for almost a month. The Iranian command and control of its missiles, drones, the numbers may have come down, but they're intact.
We all know that this guy is very mercurial. He is egoistical even.
Yeah.
In fact, there was wide talk that one of the reasons he was pushing India so hard in the last few months was because India did not agree to his version of how Op Sindoor ended last year, where the US wanted to take some credit about it. You also know what's happened between him and the French President Macron. So you have this personality who does not take very kindly to not being to being made fun of. Iran is doing that for the last for the last 2 days.
This is the kind of bizarre situation. The US has exposed itself very badly in this. They should have, in the first couple of hours, said, okay, fine, we've done this, regime changed, Khamenei is out. Now the new regime, we will negotiate with them on the oil, gas. Now you force the regime into a corner. Now it is dictating terms. Iran is dictating terms to the United States. That's how bad things are.
Hello and welcome to Not Defense. It's a month since US and Israel launched a war in the Gulf, attacking Iran as part of their operations to effect a regime change in the country and ensure that the country never ever possesses the capability to develop nuclear weapons. And it's just so difficult to put a finger on what to discuss this episode. On Monday, when Sandeep and I had a chat of what to talk about, we thought maybe we'll do sort of a takeaways for India sort of a picture on this episode. Then came Tuesday when we set the recording date, when the announcement by US President Donald Trump that there was going to be a pause in some sort of fighting came in. That okay, let's sort of decode what he said and what he meant, and let's look at the wars that US has been involved in the 21st century. And now, as we record this, there's so many more things that have happened. There's a Pakistan angle to this. There's PM Modi who's spoken in Parliament, both the houses of Parliament, very somber, interesting, somber speeches. So it's just so difficult to figure out what to talk about. Hey man, gosh. Hey Sandeep, how are you?
Hey Dev, good to be back. A week is a long time.
Yeah, which is why this episode will actually release sooner than it normally does. We record this every Wednesday, and usually our producer Tanya has the luxury of a day and a half to nicely produce and package this and have this out by Friday evening.
This is like you're on a war footing.
War footing, exactly. Yeah. So we'll try to have this out as soon as possible, probably by Thursday, because the thing is, by the time we finish recording, God knows what will have happened. Actually, things are that's how fast things are moving. Things are moving. So what we'll do is we'll actually sort of talk about the broad things that have happened in the last few days. Some questions I have with respect to Pakistan, some questions I have with respect to India, especially PM Modi's speeches. Not more of a speech as such as demeanor in Parliament when he delivered those speeches. And if time permits, we will also look at the conflicts that US has been involved in the 21st century, and also the grand old daddy of them, Vietnam War. Because I think that sort of gives us a template that you've seen happen with the US almost every time it decides to, go and give freedoms to some country. But that, like I said, if time permits, first obviously we'll focus on what's happened in the last few days. Let's recap the last 1 month. On Feb 28th, US and Israel launched missile strikes on Iran. They took out Iran's top leadership, including the Supreme Leader Khamenei. And since then, it's been basically a battle of cheap drones versus expensive missiles, SAM systems of the US and its allies in the Gulf. There have been some, major attacks here and there. Some submarine took down Iranian warship, for example. But largely, what you've seen is the entire Gulf region being on the boil, tourism being heavily impacted. energy being very, very heavily impacted. Iran has held the Strait of Hormuz, a very thin, narrow passage of sea through which most of the Middle Eastern oil goes out to the rest of the world. It's held it hostage. It's not letting oil pass from it, apart from two countries which it considers friendly, like India. China is another one. And because of that, you've had oil prices going up. The markets are very choppy. Everybody is feeling the heat. Everybody except people in the US, by the way, because the US, interestingly, is not dependent on Middle East for its oil. The US more or less is pretty self-sufficient when it comes to oil, and even if it does need, gets it from South America, which recently,
It's their
Venezuela.
backyard now.
Yeah,
They
and
own the
Trump, by the way,
place.
has gone on record to say that, "Hey, bhai, we don't even need that oil. So Europe, you take care of it yourself if you want, if you care about that oil." That's how we are laughing about it, but that's how unfortunate and sad the situation is right now, actually. So that's what's happened over the last 1 month. What happened earlier this on Monday was we were expecting another escalation in conflict. You already had something happen last week, towards the end of last week when we recorded the episode, when Israel launched strikes on energy infrastructure in Iran responded in kind. That was an escalation, like we had discussed. And then US, Trump said that if Iran does not let oil pass through Strait of Hormuz, he would be attacking Iran's power plants. To which Iran said that if that happens, it would be attacking all power plants in the region of Gulf, especially power plants linked to US bases in the region, as well as power plants of Israel. However, interestingly, on Monday, Trump, on his social media platform, Truth Social, said that some talk has been happening with Iran, and he's pretty happy with the way things are progressing. And so he told his Department of War, that he recently renamed, that no strikes on power plants for the next 5 days.
Yeah, no power plants and no energy infrastructure.
Yeah, for the next
to be
5 days,
targeted.
as talks progress. Since then, there's been a lot of reporting in US media, in Iranian media, that has been some sort of back channel that's been arranged in part due to Egyptian help. However, Iran on record has said that there's no talk happening, that the US is dreaming this up. They are
It's talking to
negotiating,
itself.
talking to itself. Yeah, just this morning they've
Yeah.
said that. There have also been a lot of jokes, jibes, memes posted by Iranian handles, official handles, by the way, embassy handles, including the one in India, taking a dig at Donald Trump and the US and the situation at hand. First off, Sandeep, I want to try and understand where we are. We are recording this on a Wednesday, like I said. Trump's deadline for those 5 days gets over on Friday, which interestingly is, according to the Wall Street Journal, is around the time a group of Marines who were in and around Japan are supposed to enter the US CENTCOM area. CENTCOM is a central command of the US military that's handling all the operations in Iran. So they'll be entering there. Just before recording, you spoke about how there is chatter of the US dispatching its 82nd Airborne Division, the Army's paratrooper unit. It's famed from the D-Day of World War II. That's the unit did take part in that invasion of Europe. So the big question, obviously, Sandeep, is this honestly a pivot in Trump's strategy? Has he realized that something that he had promised never to do, get US engaged in a forever war, that's happening on his watch? Or is this just a tactical pause, which is what Iran is fearing? There's a reporting by Axios this morning that Iran thinks this is just a trap to lure them into a sense of complacency, and come Friday, and US is going to be coming in hammer and tongs. Your thoughts on this?
No, exactly. So, what has happened in the last nearly a month now is, so what's happened over the last month is this, and this is something that we've not seen with the United States and a smaller power in the 21st century, that the US has bombed a country for almost a month, like literally round the clock. The US and Israel, two of the most powerful air forces, and I'm not even counting the US Navy, which is an equally powerful air force. Just US and Israel have been bombing Iran for almost a month. The Iranian command and control of its missiles, drones, the numbers may have come down, but they're intact.
Yes.
This is unprecedented. And as you mentioned, they've cocking a snook at the United States. So I think the big question to ask is, has the Trump, has the US, have these two countries literally fallen into a trap out of which there seems to be no way for them but to exit? And if you see the rhetoric that's coming out of Iran, they seem to be holding all the cards right now. And this is bizarre. I mean, I call this war a stupid war, right? Because, look, Iran has been on the strategic horizon of the United States ever since 1979, right? Ever since the revolution,
Yeah.
because they're looking at it from a different perspective, different from our thing. They're looking at the way empires look at, geographies, like Iran must be under their control, the Saudi Arabian peninsula must be under their control. Iran broke away. It began this anti-US, anti-Israel rhetoric. It began exporting the revolution. And very interestingly, this is Mohammed bin Salman who said this a few years back, where he said that, why did Saudi Arabia export Wahhabism? It was basically at the behest of the United States. That's one question that always puzzled me. Why did the Saudis suddenly start exporting after 1979? It's that it was the US which asked them to do it to counter not just communism, but also radical Islam coming out of Iran, Shia, the revolution there. Now, what has happened is that ever since Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran was always on the radar. So, in fact, the neocons of George Bush's vintage, they wanted to invade Iran. Right in the beginning of the 21st century, there was a whole lot of people like Cheney, for instance. Dick Cheney was the leader of that movement, who was after George Bush Jr., that we must invade Iran. Now's the opportunity. And Iran was actually under a lot of pressure at that time. But for various reasons, they ended up invading Iraq, right? 2003, that another stupid war. $2-3 trillion gone, thousands of US servicemen gone. They pulled out 2003 to about 2011, right? Now, Iran, post 2011, a lot of US presidents have looked at it, including Barack Obama for 2 terms. They understood that Iran is a country you cannot take on militarily because it is not Iraq. And it's certainly not Afghanistan. I mean, Iran is the size of Iraq and Afghanistan put together. It's half the size of India. It's almost 2 million square kilometers. And if you look at the map, I never tire of saying this, Iran is like a natural fortress, right? Surrounded by mountains on all sides, deserts in the middle, and a very large, capable ground force element. So till the time you don't mobilize, ground forces, you will not be able to defeat Iran militarily. And the conditions that the United States is asking of Iran at the start of this, give up your nuclear weapons program, your nuclear program, cap it, hand over all your enriched uranium to us, stop your ballistic missile program. We've discussed this in the past. And the fourth one, of course, stop your so-called axis of resistance.
Of proxies,
all your proxies should stop. Now, these are conditions that Iran was close to accepting when the talks began around the 26th, when they concluded, where the Oman mediated talks. And they broke down, of course, when the US began bombing on the 28th. So Iran is in a position now where it does not trust the United States. It never takes it at face value because they realize that, look, we were talking last year, we got bombed. As late as this year, in February, we were talking again, we got bombed. This could well be a tactical pause, as you said. It is a tactical pause because I'm not looking at what Trump says or what the United States says. I am looking at the movement of troops. There are 2 Marine Expeditionary Units that are moving in. And we discussed this on your show on the 11th of March, I remember, when I said Kargil is going to be an objective. It's going to be an objective because the US does not hold any cards. They've realized that there is a limit to bombing. I mean, you can't keep bombing and hope to achieve an objective. It hasn't served those objectives yet. The Iranians are still fighting. They're still launching missiles, maybe not in those numbers. They're able to launch missiles in retaliation to certain things. If their energy infrastructure is bombed, they're able to retaliate. So their command and control is intact. So the United States is now in a very embarrassing position now that it literally holds no cards. Blocking the Straits of Hormuz is an option that we discussed in the newsroom a year ago. When the 12-day war was on, we were looking at what Iran's options were, and this was the thing. And this is, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. This has been done in the past. When Iran has been pushed to the wall, it's begun attacking ships in the Straits of Hormuz. Because, let's face it, it is a dictatorship in Iran, right? It is a religious dictatorship. It's a Shia theocracy. For them, the primary goal is to protect the regime, protect the revolution. The IRGC exists to protect the revolution and the regime. It doesn't exist only to protect the Iranian people, right? So if the regime felt threatened and it sees foreign powers meddling or encouraging insurgencies, then it will retaliate. And what happened in December after the protests is horrible. 6,000 people, they believe, have been murdered. But the thing is that the US has no plan. It has no strategy. It went into this thinking that it was going to be a Venezuela kind of operation. And it's proved to be anything but. And I think the reason for this is hubris again. Trump went into Venezuela. He got a quick mission accomplished over there. It was unprecedented what happened. We've discussed this in the past. In January, when he went there, he got Maduro. And that went to his
12
head.
hours, I think, max.
Yeah, it was a couple of hours. And it's a lightning operation. And we spoke about how this is the first time that one head of state has literally been abducted from his palace, a fortified palace, a location which was called the Rock, which was so impregnable. He was guarded by Cuban bodyguards. They managed to use all kinds of, LRADs and stuff and pull him out of there. Unprecedented. Now, that might have gone to Trump's head. And he would have said, let's do the same thing. We'll do a quick decapitation strike here. The entire Iranian leadership will, collapse. And the question then to ask is, then what? Then what? Oh, then Iran will surrender. Well, that didn't happen. So very clearly, they didn't have a contingency. And this is why you go into military operations with all manners of contingencies. You will have a ground forces element. You will have this thing. You will have your allies in place. There is a reason that the US always goes into crises like this with allies, right? Trump went into the scene. He's insulted all his allies. I've been talking to Europeans and they think this is the guy who wanted to invade us and, take over Greenland. And now he wants us to come and help him for something that he's broken, right? So Trump is, he has stumbled into this war and now he is literally clutching at straws. All of these things, any any student of geopolitics would have told him, look, this is what is going to happen. Iran will fight. They'll fight to the finish because they believe in this cult of martyrdom, right?
Yeah.
And he's converted Khamenei into a martyr, and he will be an eternal martyr, the martyr who died, facing the enemy. The other way of looking at it, he would have died of old age, which he was anyway. He was 86. He was in his late 80s. He would have died quietly, peacefully. He would have not been worshipped the way he is now. Now he's become a martyr. As Iran had a stockpile of weapons, it seems to have a stockpile of leaders as well. Every leader that you kill, there's another replacement for him. So then where is your strategy? Is this all that you had in mind? And now you are approaching with your MEUs, with your 82nd Airborne, you're approaching the beginnings of the US involvement in Vietnam. I see an eerie parallel to Vietnam here. 1965, Gulf of Tonkin incident, US warships are targeted by the North Vietnamese army, and the US then starts sending in troops, and then battalions become brigades, brigades become divisions, divisions become corps, corps become armies, and then before you know it, you're fighting this unending, never-ending war. So this is the thing that Robert Pape, there are things that I disagree with him on. There are things I agree with him on. And one thing is that the smart munitions trap.
Yes.
It's, the whole US security establishment, including the Department of War, is, they drank their own Kool-Aid. There's no other way of explaining it. The Kool-Aid is that we have the ability today, the US is the strongest military power that the world has ever known. We can one target, one smart weapon. We have AI targeting, and that's literally happening. Yeah, AI is giving you solutions. There's no other way you could hit 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 targets. These are all AI-driven. Palantir and all of the others guys are behind this war machine. And that leads you to believe, if I do this, I can keep doing this, and Iran will collapse. But again, this is something that we've discussed in the past, is that you have to give your enemy agency as well. That he has a plan. He will also do certain things. Everything might not work out to the way you've planned. And now look, Trump has painted himself into a corner.
Yeah.
He's stuck. He's stuck in a way that many people saw coming. And that's why key figures from the Biden administration, Blinken and all that, were literally imploring him, President Trump, please take the win, exit. It's been 4 days, exit. There is no end to this. This will keep continuing. You get into the spiral that, see, you sit over there because they think tactically, they'll come up with plans, right? I mean, the plan that we discussed for Karg Island is something that just came out of the top of my mind because I knew if you don't have any cards to negotiate with the Iranians, you will have to get those cards. How do you get those cards? The military comes in. They say, okay, we'll capture this island, we'll capture that island, and then we will use those to negotiate a way out of this. There's no other way. You have to negotiate. But if you don't have any cards, the Iranians won't even negotiate with you. Their spokesperson is laughing at you, right?
Literally.
He's telling you that they're talking to themselves. They have no cards. And they've, in fact, given a list of demands. The Iranians have said, now we're going to start taxing ships.
They've said no US bases in the Gulf. Whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine the Gulf.
When is the last time a country in the 21st century has told the US, get out?
Yeah, imagine.
It's never happened.
Yeah.
And this, like we've discussed again in the past, that there are serious countries that are watching this. The Chinese are watching. Xi Jinping is watching it. Vladimir Putin is watching this. The US is making a joke of itself, right? It has gone into this, stumbled into this conflict, and now Trump is flailing about. He's, even looking for patsies. Oh, it wasn't my idea. Hexeth, this guy. Hexeth might even take the rap. He might be forced out. Who never know? You never know. And the very interesting thing that Iranians want the vice president,
J.D. Vance,
Vance to negotiate. They see him as an honest actor.
Because
they don't want Kushner because he's in the
Israeli agent of Arabs.
Yeah. So this is the kind of bizarre situation. The US has exposed itself very badly in this. They should have. In the first couple of hours said, okay, fine, we've done this, regime changed, Khamenei is out. Now the new regime, we will negotiate with them on the oil, gas. Now you force the regime into a corner. Now it is dictating terms. Iran is dictating terms to the United States. That's how bad things are. And this is what is going to push them into irrational actions like grabbing islands, an island, several islands, grabbing the Straits of Hormuz, positioning warships over there, attacking Karg Island or Keshim, that big island at the mouth of the Straits of Hormuz. They will do all of this to try and get some kind of bargaining chip to force Iran out. So, I mean, it is a, what do you call it? A bugger's muddle? That's what this seems like.
Yeah. But, Sandeep, that is what makes it so scary. And sort of as I lead into the next question, is how Iran has responded over the last couple of days, verbally, obviously, and on social media through those memes, etc. So far, in the last 1 month, I think Iran has been pretty on point with its communication strategy.
Yeah.
In fact, I think Iran's foreign minister Araghchi has been he's been very clear, and he's perhaps been very good at getting the communication and the message of Iran across to the entire world. And in fact, even their ambassador, who had come to our conclave, who had come to the conclave. That session, that half an hour when he spoke to us, it was quite a decent watch, because I think in their heads the Iranians were very clear in terms of the messaging they want to give to the world. But what we're talking about right now, and what Iran has been doing over the last couple of days, making personal jokes about Trump. Like you said, cocking a snook at him. Putting out memes that make him look, like stupid, almost like jokerish. These are not things someone like a Donald Trump takes very nicely. We all know that this guy is very mercurial. He is egoistical even. In fact, there was white talk that one of the reasons he was pushing India so hard in the last few months was because India did not agree to his version of how Op Sindoor ended last year, where the US wanted to take some credit about it. You also know what's happened between him and the French President Macron. So you have this personality who does not take very kindly to not being to being made fun of. Iran is doing that for the last for the last 2 days. We've discussed previously that all Trump needs is that ability and that capability and that one factor that lets him say, "Hey, we won, I won, great, America great, we are going away," right? Why won't Iran just give it to him? It was so easy, right? Just like, I'm not saying fold. I'm just say stay quiet. Say, oh yeah, we're negotiating. Do your negotiations. But why do you think Iran, by doing what it's doing in the last couple of days and situation being as such, like the one you've described, it's actually going to make things worse?
Well, I think if I have no idea why they're doing it, but my reading of the situation is that the Iranians are doing it because uh, they believe that they control the escalation ladder,
No.
and they they think that if they start negotiating now from a position of weakness they given to Trump, it's going to lead to more attacks. The regime has survived, right? There's no doubt about that. It doesn't seem likely that the regime will collapse, or at least not in the next couple of weeks or days. Uh, what they don't want is for a tactical pause to become a strategic pause, and then there's another round of conflict where they come back again, Israel and the US, or just Israel by itself, to bomb Iran. Right? Like I mentioned, there's been a pattern to it. Last year they were bombed, 12-day war, midnight hammer happened. Then they came back again while they were talking. So they say that every time we talk, we get bombed. So, now we want to ensure that there are some cast iron guarantees
Right.
that we get, that there is going to be a lasting solution for this. And that is, so they're taking the maximalist position. Americans get out of the Gulf, right? That is one thing that they've said. The other is that they're going to start taxing ships passing through the Straits of Hormuz. All of these things are meant to get leverage in negotiations with the Americans, so that the US side does not think that the Iranians are going to be, pushed over and stuff. But there will be a negotiated settlement. There's no doubt about it. My only fear is that it doesn't appear that it's happening in the next couple of days, because, like I said, this movement of forces, there is huge movement of boots coming into theater, which suggests that they are going to capture something and use that for leverage in the talks.
Yeah.
It's all about talks, right? Either you have cards or you don't have
Exactly.
cards.
US needs cards right now. Yeah.
They need cards. So what are those cards going to be? Is it to stop bombing? Well, no. Iran says, continue bombing. We'll do to you what you've been doing to us, right? So they have that capacity to retaliate. Their missile
Right.
capacity is not been touched. Those missile cities haven't been knocked out yet. They have that residual thing. And the most important thing is the Straits of Hormuz. I mean, look how easy it was to mine it, if you look at it. It just took a dozen mines is what they say is what they've, laid across the Straits of Hormuz. Iran has in fact threatened that if you attack our infrastructure, nuclear facilities, we will permanently block the thing.
Yeah.
In fact, that's their response to the boots on ground thing.
Yes.
That if you land there, you take our islands, we will permanently block Hormuz, which means that they've threatened to use floating mines as well. Now, floating mines are banned in international convention simply because they are so dangerous. It is a mine that's not moored to anything. It's just floating on the surface of the water. It can just go anywhere.
Hit anything basically.
Hit anything, hit anywhere, move into the Indian Ocean. So it becomes a global crisis. It already is a global crisis. It's going to start hitting ships, because mines they only have one purpose: sink ships. So these are the threats that Iran has made. And it is a very low-tech investment. We focused a lot on the Shahid. We focused a lot on the ballistic missile capabilities. Not enough on the mines. Look at this low-cost solution costing a few $1,000s. The entire mining operation, if you look at it, if it's 12 mines, this whole operation wouldn't have cost even $100,000.
Yeah.
Mining the Straits of Hormuz. That's how easy it was. And you've blockaded almost 1/4 of the world's oil and gas passages. That's how easy it was for Iran. This is something they'd been planning for many years. Trump knew that this was on the anvil. They did not do anything. They did not anticipate this problem. The US decommissioned its last few minesweepers. That's how funny it
And even the UK.
And February, right? They just
Sent them back.
sent them back. There's that photograph of them all put on one big a flatbed and being taken back to the United States. So these are very rudimentary capabilities, capacities that I've been reading since I was in college, that long back, right? Now I remember in the 90s there was a big trend of talking about littoral warfare. And littoral warfare is post-Cold War. You're looking at small nations, weaker countries like Iran, North Korea, investing in brown water capabilities like mine warfare, coastal submarines, midget submarines, those kind of things. And the US realizing that it didn't have the ability to project power into the brown waters.
Yeah.
So therefore they needed minesweepers, they needed your conventional submarines even
Yes.
to tackle these threats. And now you realize that you've gone in from strategic to a position where you can't enter a place like the Straits of Hormuz without taking in casualties.
Yeah, right. A tangent over there and sort of a geek question about Marines, because I think this is something many people, those who follow the world of defense are obviously familiar with, but people who know military in the sense of the Indian military, it'll be a bit difficult for them to sort of grasp the idea of Marines, because Marines, it's almost like a military of its own, right?
Yeah,
They have their
yeah.
own ships, they have their own air vehicles. Jets, even if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
in
they
the
have their own
country,
jets, the F-35s,
US, yeah.
AV-8Bs.
So since the Marines are coming all the way from Japan, by the way, I think that also is proof of what you were talking about, that the US so underestimated how the response was going to be, that they did not even have Marines placed nearby. They have to call them all the way from Japan and take a pause of 5
Japan and
days.
San Francisco,
वहाँ से लेकर-
San Diego.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're coming from that far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's take a tangent there and let's talk about the concept of Marines, what they are and how do they differ from your standard Navy, Army and the Air Force.
Well, so the marine warfare concept, that's something that the US is really good at, because they did that during the Second World War when they were fighting this island hopping campaign,
Right.
where they went across the Pacific, multiple islands that were used as outposts by the Japanese, like fortresses, island fortresses. The Americans went in with their Marines and captured them. Iwo Jima is one thing that was in the Pacific. Bloody battles were fought there. Okinawa was another one, another very important Japanese island close to the Japanese homeland. Again, a brutal battle. And so the Marines, the legend of the Marines, it's about 19th century concept, but honed in the Second World War. During the Cold War, they refined it further. And somewhere around the 80s, towards the closing stages of the Second World War, they came up with this ARG MEU concept, which is amphibious group and marine expeditionary unit concept, which is that you have a heavy landing platform dock, amphibious assault ship, which is like a mini aircraft carrier, meaning as for the United States, because their super carriers are almost 100,000 tons. Their light carriers are the size of our carriers, Vikramaditya and Vikrant. So so that force is built around that. It's about 40,000 tons, an amphibious assault ship. It's got landing platform dock ships, usually 2 of them. So in this case, for instance, the MEU that's flying in, that's sailing in from Japan, which is somewhere in the Indian Ocean region, is a 3-ship. It's one amphibious assault ship, 2 LPDs, landing platform docks.
Right.
These landing platform docks would have would carry supplies, would carry the ships that will transport supplies from offshore to the shore. Now, how it works is that this flotilla, this amphibious group will stand off the coast of any target area, 25 to 100 nautical miles, depending on the kind of threats that they anticipate.
Right.
They stand way over the horizon. And from there, they will first conduct recce of the coast that they have to target. They will, of course, they have all kinds of, drones, satellites and all that, but they will, possibly send in special forces first. They'll send in recce scouts to look for ideal places to land and, all of that. Typically islands, they will look at small islands. And when we were talking of Khar, the only force that we were thinking of was the Marines. Then the Marines would then come in large numbers. Now, a Marine expeditionary unit is about 2,200. But the actual component of it, the fighting component, would be about 800.
Okay.
So to understand, that would be a battalion size,
Right.
headed by a colonel. And the whole MEU would be about 2,200, which is all, your sappers, your intelligence, your base, this thing, everything. But the fighting component is just 800. But they're backed with organic air power. They have helicopters, they have gunships, they have F-35Bs, which are very capable 5th generation fighter aircraft, which are carried by the amphibious assault ship.
They can land vertically, if I'm not wrong.
Not vertically, but they can. They have the C version,
Right.
which is the short takeoff and vertical landing. And
Okay,
this thing. So they have about 6 to 8 of them. Each ship carries that. So the idea is that for this to be a composite package where they don't have to rely on any other external, sources or resupply or anything like that. So it is a battalion with all these, integrated firepower. So it's one way of looking at it as just a battalion, an Indian Army battalion. No, but it's actually a battalion with possibly the striking power of a division plus in Indian terms, because they carry so much of firepower. It's not just the artillery, it's not just the fighter aircraft. They have helicopter gunships, they have heavy lift helicopters, they have medical things. So it's like literally the tip of the spear, the US spear, when it comes to sea lift capability. So they have about 10 or 11 of these, corresponding to the number of carrier strike groups. Each carrier strike group usually carries one of these ARG MEUs. And they also have three of them are on ready, standby, just as the 82nd Airborne has about 18 hours. I think they're on an 18 hours stand too. So these guys are also, I think I'm trying to remember how many hours that they are, because it takes them time to sail into the theater, but they're also on a very high level of alertness, these three ARGs, MEUs. So possibly if they're going to strike at the islands, they are going to be using this kind of tactics. And looking at the geography of Iran now, they will possibly combine it with airborne forces. So it'll be a sea-air envelopment of the island or islands.
Right. Yeah, we'll see if that happens, like you said, because this could all just be part of a build up to just build that leverage.
Yeah.
Because when you're sitting at that table and when Iran says ki, nahi karenge, kya kar loge? Then you need to have, oh, by the way, those Marines, wo kar lenge.
So it could,
be
also
just
well be a thing.
yeah.
See, it could also be a decoy. I mean, I have no access to US planning or anything like that. We're just looking at the movements and say how they could use it. One is, of course, the threat of US Marines and airborne forces moving into theater, that itself could be a leverage, right? That is one level of leverage. The other is when they actually land there and you can see their ships, that's another level. The third is when they actually move into operations and start grabbing territory. Of course, it will be contested. All of this thing, Iran is not going to, is no walkover, right? Yeah. Their ground forces are looking for a way.
They haven't been used yet.
They haven't been used, exactly. So they've been posting a lot on social media. They've been posting FPV drone footage, saying the guys in Karg are waiting. We've, supplied them with FPV drones. So they're still there. They're in caves. They're hiding in caves. In fact, today, India Today Osint Group, they just shared some interesting footage of Ankit, did this thing of Keshim, where he's located pens, concrete pens, in which boats and possibly even submarines can be hidden on Keshim Island. I didn't know that these existed. Oh. So they're possibly all hidden in these little, little caves, underground, water caves. Yeah. So, ready to pull off surprises. Because like I said, this is something that Iran seems to have planned for a very long time. 20, 30 years, they've been building up all their capabilities for precisely a time like this.
Yeah, true. We'll zoom out a bit now and take a look at things a bit closer to home, but after a quick break.
German Chancellor, Merz, for example, he said this is not a matter for NATO. NATO allies have stepped up to provide additional security in the Mediterranean region. How do you look at NATO's response to this entire conflict, and especially to the issue of the Strait of Hormuz?
Right. Let me just say on timing, I do think Trump said at the beginning 4 to 6 weeks. So we're only in week 3 now. We're not even halfway there. I think it will be longer than that. And I think we have to be committed. Once you start on regime change, you have to succeed, because a wounded regime left behind could turn out to be worse than what we faced. And that's a real risk here. Look, I think this is NATO's war. I think the threat of Iran's nuclear weapons capability, if they acquired nuclear weapons from Korea or developed their own, easily could reach Europe. They have intermediate range ballistic missiles that can do that. They can't hit the US yet, but it is Europe that's threatened. Europe knows full well also that it's threatened by Iran's terrorism. So I think the European reaction has been unfortunate.
Welcome back. Sandeep, I want to now move a bit towards the home, talk a bit about India and Pakistan.
Yeah.
So you've had suddenly Field Marshal Asim Munir rearing his head and grabbing, like, this is my time, it seems.
Field Marshal Munir just propped up under his bed.
Yeah.
Because
So
the
far-
Saudi king has been calling him and he hasn't been taking his calls.
Exactly, yes.
So,
वो पैक्ट किया थे 2
Yeah.
साल पहले साइन किया था. You have to
man,
come.
all his
I'm busy. Afghanistan war going on.
creditors,
Very busy,
all
very
his
busy.
creditors have come
Yeah.
knocking
So,
on his doors.
we discussed this before actually, that how the offensive against Taliban might just be just a way to tell the US
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Saudis as well, boss, we are busy with our own shit.
busy,
Please don't
exactly.
call us and help
Yeah.
to help you fight your war. But no, on a serious note, what's happened in the last 24 hours is that Pakistan has sort of offered to mediate between US and Iran, because like you said, the one big thing right now is the trust factor. While the US will be willing to talk to Iran wherever and through whomever, Iran is not, because of, like you said, previous experiences. Twice bitten now,
Yeah.
thrice shy. So, like you said, it said we will not negotiate with Steve Witkoff, the
Yeah.
president's points person for the region, or his son-in-law Jared Kushner. I don't know what designation he holds. I'm sorry, he's just a son-in-law.
No one knows.
Why? Because Iran thinks both of them are basically Israeli agents, not like on the payrolls of Israel,
Yeah.
but basically people who support the cause of Israel so much that they'll be blinded by their by wanting the negotiations to go in Israel's favor. They instead prefer someone like a JD Vance, who
Yeah.
they think perhaps would be a bit more, let's say, open to be a more fairness. But where does this take place? You only have 2-3 places. You have either Oman, you have Pakistan, Turkey. Qatar, not so much, because you've hit Qatar during the course of the last few days, even though Qatar is known historically to be usually
Yeah,
very
yeah.
neutral and be the one trying to broker peace in the region. But-
Oman, no. Oman has been there.
yeah,
Been
Oman
there,
also
done that.
Oman also you hit in the first day.
Yeah.
Qatar you've hit over the course of the last few days. So I don't think they'll be very happy to host Iranian leaders on the soil. But Turkey is an option, and Pakistan has formally said. So in fact, just this morning, Shahbaz Sharif had put out a post on X saying
Yeah.
that, which was reposted by Donald Trump's handle. Very interesting. So is this the dream moment for Asim Munir then?
Oh, absolutely. This is Asim Munir's moment in the sun where things are, he's like going to fly in like Superman, Chota Superman in a costume, flying into the rescue when all has failed. Donald Trump has to dial his favorite field marshal. So we had this discussion on TV on Gaurav's show last night. We were talking about this. And I said, thank God they haven't dialed us, because look, we are in a minefield right now, right? Trump is in a minefield and he's trying to get as many people that he can drag into the minefield and possibly walk on their bodies out of it, right? And one of those bodies is Pakistan. Yeah. Now, is there any guarantee that these talks are not a ploy to just buy time and strike Iran with something even bigger, like we were talking about earlier before the break, with a land attack or invade the islands, capture those islands, in which case then the peace talks thing just falls through, and the side that hosts those peace talks is severely compromised, right? It will be severe loss of face. That's something that Munir can do with, right? He can survive. Yeah. He is eternal. But for India to survive this kind of thing, I mean, that would be difficult. For us to, enter these kind of negotiations. We've talked about it in the past, but I think we would be wise to stay away from this kind of a situation. Exactly as we've stayed away from this, what is that? Board of what?
Peace.
Yeah.
What's happening to that, by the way?
It's gone off the radar. It'll be back soon as this conflict gets over.
So wait, the person who convened the Board of Peace is currently busy bombing some other countries, so the peace is not happening in that part of the world?
Yeah,
is that
so
what is happening?
it's the Board of Pieces right now. So it's like, that was the peace guy. That was the peace president you were talking to. I'm not a peace president anymore. Yeah. I'm going after Alfred Nobel's other big invention, which is gunpowder.
I'm trying to bomb a country and stop it from getting what I tried to stop it from getting last year, by the way. I said, no, I bombed. It would never happen. What happened to that, by the way?
Yeah.
1 year it came back.
Exactly what happened with Pete Hegseth talking about the Straits of Hormuz being open, but we can't do it because Iran is there.
Shooting
it's
missiles.
Like, I have my swimming pool is safe to use, but there's a snake in the swimming pool, so we can't use the swimming pool,
So people can blame us for laughing at what possibly is a world tragedy. Not possibly, it is a world tragedy. But
is
the
a world
thing is-
tragedy.
the
People are
thing is
dying.
the
Innocent people are dying.
The people at the helm of it are, like you said, it's comical. It's
It
what
is
is happening
comical,
right now. Trump literally has said it's Hexet's idea in the first place. He
Yeah,
was the one
yeah.
who's pushing for it. And I think just this morning he also said double down, and he said that even when things were sort of calming down, people around him were urging him, ki, okay, President, let's pull back. It was Hexet who was pushing for more violence and more bombing.
Did we discuss Fayaz Tucker at any point?
No, we haven't.
Yeah. Okay. So there's this Hindi film for viewers out there. My reference, Fayaz Tucker is a character in a Hindi film, Govinda movie called Akhiyon Se Goli Mare, and he's played by a fantastic comic actor, the late Razak Khan, and his name is Tucker Pahalwan. So Fayaz Tucker, who's a Tucker Pahalwan, is always looking for opportunities, and his Takia Kalam is the headbutt. So he headbutts into a wall, he headbutts into people. So he's called Tucker Pahalwan. The US is the Tucker Pahalwan under Trump and Hexet. They're always looking for opportunities. So Venezuela worked out. Now we'll go and Tucker Pahalwan goes into Iran. So it's a comical situation, and it's sad. We're laughing at it, but people are dying. Innocent people are dying for no fault of theirs. It's because some stupid people decided to start a war, which they thought they would end in a few hours and pronounce mission accomplished. And lo and behold, it's a month, and they're going to dig deeper and deeper into this, and they will start reaching for wonder weapons that will promise them quick victory, or they will push Marines into capturing territory. They believe that can be used as leverage. There are no easy ways out of this. So, I mean, it's really sad the way things have come to, and this possibly happens when you get reality show hosts, you get podcast hosts. I don't mean you, Dave. The talk show hosts to run military strategy.
Yeah, true.
This is what seems to have happened over there.
Yeah, right. One more point about this about to do with India is you had PM Modi talking to Parliament on Monday and Tuesday, Lok Sabha on Monday, Rajya Sabha on Tuesday. Familiar speeches, familiar addresses. But the message in both of them was his demeanor, his body language pretty serious. The message was one of brace yourselves.
Right.
Do you think it's because of what we've discussed so far, of the sheer unpredictability of where we are right now? Not just the person, Donald Trump, because he himself, he himself famously says, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. But right now, like most world powers, do you think all world powers, including India right now, just do not know exactly where things will go from now on?
Even Trump's allies don't know where things will go. I mean, so-called allies, right? NATO and France and the UK and, all that. It's a crazy situation. I mean, if somebody had projected this way back in 2003, the 2003 guys, George Bush and Colin Powell and all
WMD
that,
guys,
the WMD guys, thanks. They look like very sensible military strategists, in comparison. So here's the thing, that they've gone into the stupid war. I can't call it anything else. I was just thinking about it yesterday. What do you call this war? It's a stupid war. You just stumbled into this. You made all the worst assumptions about this. And I was remembering what Donald Rumsfeld said about this unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
When they asked him about,
Yes,
you
I
remember 2003,
Yeah.
wherever the Iraqi WMDs. So there are known knowns, there are known unknowns, and there are unknown unknowns.
Things we don't even know, we don't know.
We don't know, exactly. So this kind of, and Rumsfeld had a certain style of doing it. And you've replaced Rumsfeld with Pete Hegseth. And Pete Hegseth is a stand-up comic of his own. You look at the way he's conducting himself. Yeah. The talk show hosts are having a field day, by the way, in the US. If you look at the 9 p.m., those guys have come back to life, right? They were knocked out, senseless last year. And now today, everyone's come back swinging at the Trump, administration. So, I mean, there is no way out of this. And the only way I see out of it is for the US pronounce mission accomplished, savior. And exit,
yeah. But the Rumsfeld quote, by the way, there are certain natural substances that exist on Earth, I think, which if you partake, those quotes start making a lot more sense, Sandeep. So maybe that's where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. So I think we do have some time left. So yes, we will do what I wanted to do this week is talk about the US's previous wars. Because, and not in detail, obviously, but sort of to give us a template of what happens and how things sort of like you begin with this one objective and then you end up something else altogether. So what I had in mind was to talk about Vietnam War and then talk about the several wars that have happened in the 21st century, wars or conflicts involving the US. But I think that'll be too long. So I think we should just combine all of them into one and do a special episode, by the way, on the Vietnam War. Because personally, I think it's a topic I'm very fascinated by. I've watched the PBS documentary on it. Very, very interesting.
Oh, the 10-part series?
Yeah, the 10-part series. Series. I forgot the name. What's it called?
The Vietnam War.
It's called the Vietnam War.
It is. It's who's it by? The very famous documentary filmmaker.
I'll Google it while you answer it, and then we'll give it to our listeners as well. So we'll do a special episode just on that. But even then, if we were to talk about, because the Vietnam War gives you that full template. It was that full war of almost like more than nearly a decade. While the ones that have happened in the 21st century, sort of smaller compared to that, apart from Afghanistan, obviously. So if you look at Vietnam, if you look at Afghanistan, if you look at Iraq, if you look at Libya, Syria, but Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria are the ones that have happened in the 21st war. Afghanistan, very interesting, by the way. 20 years, billions of dollars only to replace Taliban with Taliban. I mean,
Taliban 1.0 with Taliban 2.0.
2.0, but in effect...
Here you're Khamenei 1.0 with Khamenei 2.0.
Yeah. So, take us through this, Sandeep. Do you think what we're seeing in Iran is the beginning of what we've always seen happening with the US?
It's a familiar pattern. And I'll talk about the Vietnam War since that's a 20th century war, but it's a defining moment for US military power. Is that Vietnam is a colony of France. France, after the Second World War, comes back. It was occupied by Imperial Japan during the Second World War. France comes back and tries to reassert its colony, French Indochine, as it was called. So you had an insurgency which begins in around North Vietnam. The French come in. There's a huge, brutal battle that they fight with the Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese, the NVA, and the Viet Cong. And you have a Dien Bien Phu where the French are decisively defeated. And then you have peace talks. There is a seventh parallel that's created, dividing Vietnam into two zones, North and South. North is communist, South is Western allied, right? Then the United States enters this conflict because they feel that communism would spread throughout the world. And Vietnam is ground zero for that because there is this war against communism, which the US is duty-bound to fight. And you have Lyndon B. Johnson coming in and saying that we need to go in there, send advisors first. So you have CIA, Special Forces, advisors, and then 65 on, full-fledged after the Gulf of Tonkin incident, the US starts deploying numbers of troops. And then the battalions become divisions, divisions become corps, and corps become armies. And that's exactly what happened. And then through this war, the US is fighting. LBJ's advisors are telling him that we're winning. How do you know that? Well, we're killing more Vietnamese. So more body counts led them to believe that they were winning the war. Reference to present context, you're bombing so many targets.
Exactly.
Iran is, you're bombing so many targets, Iran's capacity to fire missiles is shrinking, therefore Iran is going to be defeated. Similar scenario. But by 1973, the US is practically defeated. And those iconic pictures from the roof of the embassy in Saigon, the helicopters taking off, that is repeated in the 21st century. I'll come to that. So Vietnam ends in a disaster for the US. 1973, NVA rolls down. North and South are united. US lost 70, 80,000 servicemen. Hundreds of thousands of people injured. US servicemen injured. Up to 1 million Vietnamese killed. Agent Orange being used there. My friend and colleague, Colonel Avasthi, just returned from Vietnam. He spent a week there. And he is shaken. And he's a military man, professional military, a soldier, more than 20 years in the army. He's commanded regiments. He saw that and he was shocked. Never been to Vietnam. And he was showing me the pictures and all that. I got to go there. He was talking about Agent Orange, that today, even half a century later, people are still affected by that. They dropped almost 1 million tons of ordnance on Vietnam. And I've not been to Vietnam, but I've been to Cambodia. And I know that the bombing, the US strategic bombing of Vietnam extended into Cambodia as well, because the Vietnamese were going into Cambodia. And so they started bombing Cambodia. And there you destabilize that country as well. Cut to present day, 21st century. 9/11 happens, 2001. The US goes after the Taliban because Taliban are sheltering Al-Qaeda. Now you have a light footprint operation that Rumsfeld comes up with. Northern Alliance with US Special Forces operators.
Delta Force, if I'm not wrong.
No, it was CIA Special Activities Division.
Oh, the
now
initial
center,
force, yeah.
that came in. And then, of course, some element of airborne guys came in. Deltas, Rangers, all of them came in. 2001. Now, they should have withdrawn and left. But they said, no, now we have to
quick
hunt.
operation. We'll get Osama and done, dusted.
So that continues. And it ends in 2021, 20 years. It's the longest US military deployment in its history. A very similar Saigon type of evacuation in August 2021, where the US literally pulls out. There are people falling off planes. They're literally hanging on to the wheels of these aircraft. It's
They left their
heart-rending.
weapons behind, by the way.
They left $5 billion worth of hardware behind, which will outlive not just us, 2-3 generations after us. That's the kind of weapons have extraordinarily long lives, right? I've been doing this for a long time. I know I've seen weapons dating back from the early 20th century still in use with insurgents and guerrillas and all of that. So that is Afghanistan. 2 years after Afghanistan, Bush gets the idea that this is the time to go after Saddam. So 2003, WMDs, they make the case for an invasion of Iraq. The UN says absolutely not. They said they go ahead irrespective. They invade Iraq with 150, 60,000 soldiers. The Iraqi military is defeated. Saddam is dethroned. He's captured. He's executed. The US ends up fighting an insurgency, loses 2,000-3,000 soldiers. That continues for till about 2013, right?
Yeah.
Not 13, about 11.
11.
That's Obama is the one who starts authorizing the withdrawal.
Yeah.
The drawdown
Winding
begins
it up.
under him. So that's almost a decade. So in the span of 20 years, the US has fought 2 wars, unwinnable wars. It's expended something like $4 to $5 trillion. They say that it's much more than that. It's lost thousands of servicemen, 4,000, 5,000 servicemen, wounded tens of thousands of them. It's not got very much in return, right? The Taliban 1.0 replaced by Taliban 2.0. In Iraq, you've unwittingly created a Shia super state.
Yeah.
Because they didn't realize that Saddam was Sunni, ruling over a majority Shia country. When Saddam goes, Iran becomes the most powerful, right from the Mediterranean to the Arabian Sea. Syria, Iraq, and Iran, right? And there are smaller operations. Libya, you didn't have boots on ground, but you had the US Navy and US Air Force conducting bombing missions. NATO, it was NATO-led. Gaddafi was unseated, 2011. He was overthrown. He was murdered, lynched literally by his own people. There were rebel forces at play. And in 2014, just 3 years later, the country breaks up into 2. And that's the thing. That country is in the state of eternal civil war. For more than a decade now, right? Ceased to function as a country. Syria, you can argue that there were no boots on the ground. It was so, in that sense, it wasn't a US military operation. But post-Arab Spring, 2011, that country has been occupied by ISIS, by Turkish forces, by now Israeli forces, and the Syrian Arab Republic has ceased to exist. Right? It is just torn up into different things, and now former terrorists, Al-Qaeda chaps, former Al-Qaeda, ISIS guys have now come back into power. The US has played a role over there. So take your pick, Dev. There's a recipe out here. There's a buffet over here. You can pick the operation that you think this is going to play out as. Iran, there is a template that the US has been there, done that in all of these things. And the argument a lot of people make about this, why does the US make the same mistakes every few years. It's because the costs of those mistakes are, okay, we are looking at it, $1 trillion wars, US lives lost, personal lost. But the US homeland itself isn't affected. They're so far away. They are protected by 2 oceans. They have everything they want, all the resources, including oil, gas, whatever, you name it. US is self-sustaining. They don't need anything from any other country. And they exert control over other countries and other parts of the world because they are the dominant superpower. For them, these wars possibly make some sense.
Right. Yeah. So it's gonna be something to watch how this unfolds, and we'll do that. And by the way, that documentary, PBS documentary that we were talking about, Ken Burns,
Ken Burns,
the
yeah.
10-part documentary. It's a fantastic watch.
Yeah.
I think people should really
You should,
take some time and watch
for
it.
all of you
It's
out there, please
one of
watch
the best
the
ones I've
Vietnam
seen.
War, because after I watched the Vietnam War, I started watching Apocalypse Now. I haven't watched that movie even once. I used to think it was a Hollywood classic and all of that. It's a great movie maybe, but you realize that reality is far more horrific than what was depicted in a Hollywood film.
Yeah.
And that reality of that war hits you in Ken Burns' documentary.
Yeah, true. One last point, Sandeep, on the events of this week and what may happen after this episode is released or even before that. Israel.
Yeah.
We talked about how Israel is the one who really had the most to fear from Iran, has the most to
Yeah.
fear from Iran. Israel is the one who's hoping to achieve the most out of this current conflict, hoping to end once and for all its nemesis and its threat for like kingdom come. But unlike the US, Israel does not have the kind of pressures that
Yeah.
the US is facing, the US president has to
Yeah.
face, regardless
Yeah.
of who the president is, whether it's Donald Trump or somebody else.
Yeah.
You're the world's biggest economy, by the way, so
Yeah.
you're going to have that pressure. At some point, the US or Donald Trump may consider doing something that is much more in the US's interest or the world's interest rather than, let's say, the Israel's interest. Right now, as things are unfolding, as whatever you call it, tactical pause for negotiation, for talks, whatever is happening. As this is happening, what do you think is going through Benjamin Netanyahu's mind? And how do you think Israel will be a player in all of this? Because remember, Israel is a kind of a country which has done this in the past. And you won't be surprised that they will end up doing something escalatory just to ensure that their ends are and objectives are met.
Absolutely. So, the thing is that Benjamin Netanyahu has been at war for 2.5 years now. So it's began on the 27th of October, 2023. He's facing tremendous domestic pressures as well. There are corruption cases against him. And of course, this accusation of letting his guard down on the 7th of October, those things will return to haunt him at some point. But he's begun this war, he's fighting this war. And for the Israeli state, especially the hardliners, the end state for them is the destruction of the Iranian regime.
Yes.
And, the times that I visited, I was there in Israel in 24, and I remember talking to a cross-section of military strategic community and asking them that, what is your end state? So they said it's Iran. And, all our troubles can be traced back to Iran. And this implacable hostility that they have for us right from 1979. So then I asked them that, what's the solution for this? Is that it's regime change in Iran. I said, do you have the capability to do it? They said, no, we cannot do it on our own. We are a small country. They understood their limitations. The only way we can do it is if we get the United States in on this. Only the US in the world today, they said, has the capacity, has the capability to effect regime change. So what you're seeing now is the US and Israel making common cause on the Iranian regime. The US may waver a bit because they're not very clear what the issue is with the nuclear weapons, whether Iran is actually making ballistic missiles with the capability to reach the United States, continental United States, or whereas Israel sees an existential threat to itself and is prepared to fight the long war. And if they will, given a chance, he would fight all through 2026 as well, regardless of what happens to the countries around, the infrastructure, energy infrastructure being hit. He doesn't care. He's going for the kill because they believe they have, after almost more than 4 decades, they finally have a chance to target the Iranian regime, bring down the regime. It's already weakened. Let's not forget that it may be holding certain cards right now, but the regime is weakened. The military capabilities are degraded to such an extent now that their survival is in doubt beyond a certain point. They can survive now, but in the long run, this is going to be untenable. The sanctions, the fallout of the war, the fact that you could possibly have civil war as well, and these would be engineered by external forces.
Yeah, right. Cool. I think we'll end it on that note. One final quick question is the red lines when we talk about when it comes to negotiations. You have this morning reporting by WSJ and if I'm not wrong, Bloomberg or somebody else detailing the respective sides' pointers for end of war so far. 15 points from the US, not much different from what was there before. Actually, more or less a carbon copy of that. Iranians also not much different, but the one that struck me was no US bases in our region, which is the question I want to ask you. Of those demands that you've seen out in public, we don't know what's actually going to be discussed on the table. Which ones do you think are the ones that either side will never ever agree?
Well, to my mind, the non-negotiables as far as Iran is concerned is the ballistic missile program. Right, the missile
that's its
program
only sort of defense.
Yeah, they have nothing else. They don't have a navy. They don't have a air force. The only thing they have is the missile force and their drones. That is non-negotiable for them. They could even talk about handing over nuclear weapons, the nuclear
facilities,
HEU, and cap their thing, which they were planning to do in any case, if you go by what the Omani ambassador was saying on the 26th. But for the United States, the non-negotiables are the moving out of the bases there. There's no way they're going to. That's not happening. Exactly. They're not going to move out of the bases in the GCC countries, and this whole thing of accepting Iran's thing in the Straits of Hormuz. That's
tax,
that they're never allowed to. But that could well be a ploy to create a bargaining chip for themselves. Because they hold the cards now as it stands. Iran has the chips. It has the ability to widen the it has demonstrated its ability to widen the conflict across West Asia, and it's blocked the Straits of Hormuz. It's just Chinese, Indian, and Pakistani bound ships that are plying.
Who would have thought there'd be a day, like you said earlier in this episode, that the country in the world would tell the US, get out of our neighborhood? Well, it's come to that 1 month of, like Sandeep says, a stupid war. And I couldn't disagree with that at all. I completely agree with you, Sandeep. That's what we're at. And I think we'll just have to keep a watch on what happens. Hopefully nothing much has changed from now, as in when we are finishing this recording, to when our producer Tanya is able to get this episode out. Otherwise, for all we know, this entire discussion was moot, because by the time we walk out, we'll know, something else has happened, and let's go back, record again. Right. Great, Sandeep. Thanks. Obviously, next week is also going to be this or something to do with this. So we'll see how things pan out over the next few days, few hours, and we'll come back very soon. Thanks, Sandeep.
Thanks, Dev.
And thanks as always to our listeners and viewers. That's it for this week's Defense News. For more, tune in next week. Till then, stay safe and do not cross any boundaries without a passport. Bye-bye.